In a world where love often intertwines with money, the boundaries of genuine connection can blur, leading to unexpected twists and turns. Meet Jordan, a charismatic young black man with dreams bigger than his modest upbringing. Despite his struggles, he's always had a way with words and an innate charm that lights up any room. Yet, lurking beneath his friendly smile is a burning desire for a life filled with luxury, fine dining, and the kind of wealth that only a select few can experience. On the other side is Veronica, a successful businesswoman in her late 40s who has spent years building an empire. Intelligent and confident, she's seen it all in the high-stakes world of finance. And when she meets Jordan, she sees a spark that reignites her sense of adventure. As their worlds collide, it's hard not to root for their love story. They meet at a lavish gala, where Veronica is the guest of honor, and Jordan is working as a server. With a quick smile and clever banter, he captivates her attention. At first glance, it seems like a classic tale of romance. The beautiful, wealthy woman falling for the charming young man. But there's a catch. Jordan has a plan. He's been dreaming of a life free from financial worries, and marrying Veronica seems like the ticket to that dream. As they embark on their whirlwind romance, the couple appears to be living the fairy tale. They travel to exotic locations, dine at the finest restaurants, and share intimate moments that feel genuine and deep. But as their relationship blossoms, Jordan struggles to keep up the facade. He becomes increasingly entangled in his own web of lies, and the pressure of maintaining the act begins to take its toll. The lavish lifestyle he once fantasized about now comes with expectations and secrets that threaten to unravel everything. Meanwhile, Veronica, smitten with the younger man, begins to see glimpses of hesitation in his eyes. He sometimes appears distracted, as if he's carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. Is it just the pressures of their intense romance, or is there something more? Her instincts start to nag at her, and she begins to question whether Jordan truly loves her, or if he's just after her wealth. Then, everything changes when Veronica stumbles upon a hidden message on Jordan's phone while he's in the shower. A message from an old friend asking how his plan is coming along sends chills down her spine. Her heart races, and in that moment, the facade starts to crack. She feels a surge of anger and betrayal. Who is this man she's opened her heart to? As the reality of the situation sinks in, Veronica is torn between her feelings and the undeniable evidence of deceit. As she confronts Jordan, the tension reaches a boiling point. He stands before her, caught off guard and scrambling to come up with an explanation. The truth begins to unravel, revealing a series of choices that led them both down this precarious path. But just as Veronica demands answers, a shocking revelation about Jordan's past surfaces, leaving both characters reeling. With their love story hanging in the balance, the stakes have never been higher. Will Veronica confront her feelings for a man who may have never been honest with her? Can Jordan salvage their relationship after being exposed? Or will his desire for wealth cost him the love he never expected to find? As the two grapple with the truth, their future hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of love and betrayal. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into their tumultuous journey, uncovering secrets that could change everything. Veronica paced back and forth in her lavish living room, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her like a heavy cloak. The elegant chandeliers overhead cast a warm glow, but all she could feel was the coldness of betrayal. Jordan, standing by the window, shifted nervously, his back turned to her as he stared into the night, the city skyline glistening like diamonds against the dark. His silence spoke volumes, and the distance between them felt insurmountable. To understand the gravity of their situation, one must first peel back the layers of their individual lives. Veronica had built her career from the ground up, starting as an intern in a small financial firm and working her way to the top of a multinational corporation. She had faced challenges and obstacles that would have deterred many, but her determination and resilience had propelled her forward. Now at 48, she was a powerful figure in her industry, respected and feared in equal measure. But in her pursuit of success, she had sacrificed much of her personal life, often finding solace in the arms of temporary relationships that lacked the depth she craved. Jordan's life, on the other hand, had been shaped by hardship. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, he learned early on that charm could open doors. His mother worked multiple jobs to make ends meet, instilling in him the belief that wealth equated to freedom. But he also saw how money could corrupt as friends from his childhood turned to crime, seeking shortcuts to escape their circumstances. Struggling with the desire for a better life while maintaining his integrity, he often felt like a walking contradiction. When he first laid eyes on Veronica, he saw not just a potential partner, but a way out of a life filled with worry. As their relationship progressed, they both filled voids in each other's lives. Veronica enjoyed the youthful energy and fresh perspective Jordan brought, while he reveled in her world of luxury, something he had only dreamed of until now. But the deeper their connection grew, the more he felt trapped by his own deception. The hidden messages and phone calls had initially been harmless, just a way to keep his friends updated on his plan. But as the relationship intensified, so did his anxiety about being exposed. The lies he spun to make their romance seem real began to entangle him, suffocating the very love he wanted to cherish. Veronica tried to shake off the unease settling in her stomach. She had to confront Jordan about the message, but how could she approach the subject without sounding accusatory? They had shared so much, they had been vulnerable with one another. But now, doubt seeped into every aspect of their relationship. She wanted to trust him, but trust was a fragile thing, easily shattered by lies. "Jordan," she finally said, her voice shaky yet firm, "we need to talk about what I found." He turned slowly, his expression a mix of apprehension and dread. "I know. I saw the message you were looking at." His voice was barely a whisper, as if saying it out loud would somehow make it worse. "Then what is it? What plan are you talking about?" She pressed, her heart racing. "It's complicated," he replied, his eyes darting away. "I didn't mean for you to see that. I was trying to figure things out, trying to find a way to make everything work." "Make what work?" Veronica demanded, unable to keep the hurt from seeping into her tone. "This isn't just some game, Jordan. You can't play with people's feelings like that." His shoulders slumped, and he sighed heavily. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought if I could just get close enough to you, I could find a way to make things better for both of us." "But you weren't honest with me," she shot back. "If you cared about me at all, you would have told me the truth from the beginning. Was this all just a means to an end for you?" Jordan looked at her, and in that moment, she saw the turmoil in his eyes. It was a mixture of fear, regret, and something else, perhaps guilt. "No, Veronica. It's not like that. I really do care about you. But I got caught up in the idea of what we could have. I was desperate for a change, and you became my way out." Veronica felt her heart crack. His admission hung heavily in the air, and the realization that he had been motivated by desperation made her stomach churn. But beneath her anger was a flicker of understanding. She had worked so hard to attain her wealth, and while she had succeeded in business, her personal life had often taken a backseat. Jordan's ambition mirrored her own, albeit rooted in different circumstances. Yet that didn't excuse the betrayal. "Why didn't you just talk to me about it?" she asked, her voice softening. "We could have worked through it together." "I was afraid," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I was afraid that if I showed my true self, you wouldn't want me. I thought if I played the part of the perfect partner, maybe you'd fall for me for real. But now I see that it was a mistake." Tension crackled in the air between them, the silence heavy as they processed what had just been said. Veronica felt a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. She loved the man standing in front of her, but could she trust him again? The fear of betrayal lingered like a shadow, making her question everything. "Jordan," she finally said, choosing her words carefully, "I need time to think. I don't know if I can just brush this aside. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight." He nodded, his face a mix of understanding and despair. "I get it. I'll give you all the time you need. I just hope you can see that I truly care about you. I never wanted it to come to this." With that, Veronica turned away, her heart heavy, as she headed towards her bedroom. She needed space, not just from him, but from the chaos that had invaded her carefully constructed life. As she lay in bed, thoughts swirled in her mind like a storm. Was it possible for them to overcome this? Could their love survive the revelation of such a massive deception? In the days that followed, the couple drifted through the house like ghosts, their once vibrant connection now tinged with uncertainty. Veronica buried herself in work, attending meetings and conference calls, but her mind was never fully present. Each time she glanced at her phone, her heart would race, half expecting a message from Jordan, yet terrified of what it might say. Jordan, on the other hand, found himself at a crossroads. He was desperate to prove to Veronica that he was more than the sum of his plans, but how could he do that when he had been so careless with the truth? He started working on a new project, pouring his energy into something constructive, a chance to demonstrate his worth, not just as a partner, but as an individual. He spent hours in front of his laptop, researching business ideas, trying to build a legitimate venture that could show Veronica he was capable of standing on his own. But even as he dove into his work, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that he had a ticking clock over his head. He needed to win back Veronica's trust before it was too late. The growing distance between them felt like a countdown, and he was determined to beat it. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, Veronica felt the weight of indecision pressing down on her. Friends noticed her distracted demeanor, urging her to let go of the relationship that seemed destined to fail. But deep down, she wrestled with her feelings. Jordan was unlike anyone she had ever met, and despite his deception, the moments they had shared were genuine and real. One evening, Veronica attended a charity gala that she had organized, hoping the distraction would ease her mind. As she mingled with the guests, she couldn't help but notice the love stories unfolding around her. Couples laughed and danced, their connections deep and evident. It made her heart ache for the authenticity she felt with Jordan, even amidst the lies. Then, she spotted him across the room. Jordan had come to support her, standing alone, looking dapper in a well-tailored suit. He had a warmth about him that drew people in, yet she could see the tension in his posture. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He was trying, but was it enough? As she made her way toward him, her heart raced with a mixture of hope and fear. This could be the moment they either found their way back to each other, or the final nail in the coffin. She took a deep breath, bracing herself for whatever came next. "Veronica," he said, his voice a blend of relief and anxiety. "You look beautiful tonight." "Thank you," she replied, trying to gauge his expression. "I'm glad you came." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he said, his eyes earnest. "I know things have been tough between us, but I want to show you that I can be better. I can prove to you that I'm serious about us." She studied his face, searching for sincerity. "How can I trust that you're not just saying what I want to hear?" "You've lied to me before." "I know," he admitted, his voice filled with regret. "And I'm sorry. But I've been working on something that could change everything." "Change what?" she asked, curiosity piqued. "I've started a business," he said, a spark of excitement breaking through the heaviness. "I want to create something legitimate, something that reflects who I really am, and I want to do it for us. I want to show you that I can stand on my own." Her heart raced at his words, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "You're serious?" "Yes," he replied, sincerity radiating from him. "I've been putting in the hours, researching and planning. I want you to be part of it, to help me build it. I want to prove that I'm worthy of you." The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Veronica felt torn. Could she really take a leap of faith? Was there enough left of their bond to rebuild from the ashes of mistrust? As the night progressed, they danced together, lost in each other's presence, and for a moment, she could almost forget the weight of their past. But deep down, the shadows still loomed, and the unanswered questions lingered, haunting her. In the days that followed, the gala became a turning point in their relationship. Jordan continued to work tirelessly on his business, and Veronica found herself cautiously optimistic. They began to reconnect, sharing laughter and dreams. But beneath the surface, the tension of their earlier confrontation lingered like a storm cloud. Yet, unbeknownst to them, danger was lurking just beyond their reach. As Jordan immersed himself in the new venture, he started receiving cryptic messages from an unknown number. At first, they were harmless enough annoying, but nothing more than random nuisances. But then the tone shifted, the messages becoming more threatening, demanding money in exchange for silence. Jordan was thrown into a tailspin, his heart racing as he considered the implications. Was this connected to his past? The friends he had left behind? Or was it something more sinister? He felt trapped, unable to confide in Veronica without dragging her into a dark web of trouble that he had hoped to escape. Days turned into nights, filled with anxiety as he grappled with the decision to come clean. But how could he tell her without damaging the fragile trust they had begun to rebuild? The risk of exposing her to danger weighed heavily on him, and he resolved to handle it himself. As the messages escalated in intensity, so did Veronica's concerns. She noticed Jordan becoming more withdrawn, his mind preoccupied with something she couldn't quite grasp. The wall he was building around himself felt impenetrable, and she yearned to break through, to understand what was going on beneath the surface. "Jordan, is everything okay?" she finally asked one evening, her voice filled with concern. "You seem distant lately." He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just busy with the business, that's all. Trying to make it work." "Is that all?" she pressed, searching his face for the truth. "Really, Veronica?" "I promise I'm fine," he said. But the unease in his voice only deepened her worry. Days turned into weeks, and the unknown threats began to take a toll on Jordan. The pressure of hiding his fears from Veronica became unbearable, and he struggled to maintain a facade of normalcy. The business was starting to take shape, but his mind was constantly preoccupied with the consequences of his past decisions. Then one evening, while scrolling through his messages, he noticed something alarming. The unknown number had sent a picture of him and Veronica together at the gala, their smiles bright against the backdrop of the venue. His heart dropped. Whoever was behind this wasn't just threatening him, they were targeting Veronica too. In that moment, the reality of his situation became clear. He couldn't let her get hurt. He had to make a choice, reveal the truth, and risk shattering the fragile trust they had rebuilt, or keep it hidden and protect her from the danger that was quickly closing in. That night, as they sat together in their living room, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had to tell her, had to find a way to shield her from the storm that threatened to engulf them both. "Veronica," he began, his voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you." As the words hung in the air, the storm clouds gathered outside, a prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. As Jordan prepared to reveal the truth, a surge of anxiety coursed through him. The shadows in the room felt heavier, as if they were pressing down on him, suffocating him with the weight of the secrets he'd kept. He glanced at Veronica, whose expression reflected a mix of concern and love. He could see the hope in her eyes, the belief that they were on the path to rebuilding what they once had. But he feared that this confession might shatter that hope into a million irretrievable pieces. "Jordan, what is it?" she urged, her voice steady but laced with worry. "You're scaring me." He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "There's something going on, something I've kept from you. It's about my past." Veronica's brows knitted together, her concern deepening. "What do you mean? What's happening?" His heart raced as he weighed the words. "I've been getting messages, threatening messages. They're tied to things I thought I left behind when I walked away from my old life." He paused, searching her eyes for understanding. "I didn't want to bring you into it, to put you in danger. I thought if I kept it hidden, you'd be safe." The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken words. Veronica's eyes widened, and the reality of his revelation sank in. "Threatening messages? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I was trying to protect you," he said, his voice a mere whisper now. "But I didn't realize how far they would go." Veronica shook her head, her frustration palpable. "You think keeping me in the dark is protecting me? I deserve to know the truth, Jordan. We're supposed to face things together. You can't push me away now, not after everything we've been through." He wanted to reach out, to reassure her, but fear gripped him. "I didn't want to drag you into my mess. I thought it would pass, but it's getting worse. They know about us. They sent a picture of us from the gala." Her expression shifted from anger to fear in an instant. "They know about us? What do they want?" "Money. I think they want me to pay them off, to keep quiet, but I'm not sure that will be enough." The tension in the room was suffocating, each heartbeat echoing the uncertainty that hung between them. "Jordan, we need to go to the police. This is serious." "No, I can't," he shouted, panic rising in his chest. "If I do that, it'll only escalate. I have to handle this myself. I can't risk you getting hurt." "Jordan," she cried, her voice breaking, "you can't just take this on alone. We need a plan, and you need to trust me." His resolve faltered as he met her gaze. He could see her fighting back tears, her vulnerability laid bare. "I do trust you," he said softly, "but this is dangerous. I can't let you get involved in something that might put you at risk." "Then what do we do?" Veronica asked, her voice steadier now, determination replacing fear. "You can't just bury your head in the sand. We need to figure this out together." As they sat there, tension crackling in the air, Jordan's mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a coincidence. The threats felt calculated, as if someone was watching them, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He thought back to his old life, to the choices he had made, and the friends he had left behind. Was someone trying to punish him for turning his back on them? "I'll keep you safe," he said finally, though doubt crept into his voice. "I promise." But as the days passed, the tension only grew. Jordan found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, the unease creeping into every aspect of his life. He spent his nights unable to sleep, his mind consumed by the fear of what lay ahead. He could feel Veronica's concern radiating from her. She noticed the way he flinched at every unexpected sound, and how his focus was always elsewhere. He knew he had to take action. He began devising a plan to gather more information about the unknown threats. If he could pinpoint who was behind the messages, he could confront them without involving Veronica. He started by digging into his past, contacting a few old associates who might have insight into what was happening. Meanwhile, Veronica was doing her own sleuthing. She began looking into how to trace the number that had been sending the messages, determined to take matters into her own hands. The thought of Jordan facing this alone scared her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The urgency weighed on her like a boulder, and the more she learned, the more she felt like they were stepping into a dangerous game. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jordan returned home to find Veronica poring over her laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked up as he entered, and he could see the determination in her eyes. "I found something," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she tried to hide. "The number. It has ties to an underground network in the city. They specialize in intimidation and extortion." Jordan's heart dropped. "What? How do you know this?" "I traced it back through a few online forums. It's a big deal, Jordan. These people don't just threaten for fun. They'll come after you if you don't pay up." He felt the world around him tilt slightly, the gravity of the situation settling in. "We have to go to the police," he insisted. "This is beyond us." "No," Veronica said fiercely. "If we go to the police, we risk everything. They'll know we're onto them, and they could retaliate against us. We need to be smart about this." "Smart how?" he asked, frustration bubbling up. "By doing nothing? By sitting here and waiting for them to make their next move?" "By figuring out who's behind it and how to get them off our backs," she replied, her eyes narrowing. "We can't panic. We need to stay one step ahead of them." Jordan ran a hand through his hair, torn between the need to protect her and the desire to face this threat head-on. He couldn't ignore the fear creeping into every corner of their lives. "What do you suggest?" "We need to gather evidence," she said, her voice steadying. "If we can show this is more than just random threats, we can plan our next move." Jordan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision press down on him. They would work together, but the tension between them had shifted. Now, it was a partnership forged in fear and uncertainty, and the stakes had never been higher. In the following days, they began their covert operation. They watched their surroundings, taking note of anything unusual. Veronica spent her time researching more about the underground network, looking for patterns and connections, while Jordan reached out to a few trusted contacts from his past, hoping for a lead that could guide them through the murky waters ahead. But with each passing day, the tension grew. The unknown number continued to send messages, each one more aggressive than the last, demanding payment and threatening dire consequences. They felt the walls closing in, the pressure intensifying till it became suffocating. One evening, as they sat together reviewing their findings, Jordan received another message. His heart sank as he read the words, "We know where you are. It's time to pay up." Panic coursed through him, and he looked up at Veronica, who had turned pale. "We need to get out of here," he said, urgency coursing through his voice. "No," she replied, her tone firm. "We can't let them win. If we run, they'll keep coming after us. We need to confront this, but we have to be smart about it." "Smart?" he echoed incredulously. "How is sitting here while they threaten us smart?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We set a trap. If they want money, we give them something to follow. We need to get them to reveal themselves." Jordan was hesitant, but he could see the logic in her plan. They needed to outsmart their adversaries and take back control of their lives. With each day that passed, the threats felt more like a game of chess, and it was time for them to make their move. They spent the next few days crafting a plan. Veronica created a fake online account, posing as someone willing to pay. They arranged a meeting in a public place, thinking that if they played their cards right, they could confront whoever was behind the threats. It was risky, but they were both tired of living in fear. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. They drove to a secluded coffee shop, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They waited in the back, every minute stretching into an eternity, as they scanned the room for anyone suspicious. "What if this goes wrong?" Jordan whispered, the worry evident in his voice. "It won't," Veronica replied, her hand resting on his, grounding him. "We're in this together. Just stick to the plan." They waited anxiously, the atmosphere thick with tension. When the doors swung open, a tall figure stepped inside, wearing a hoodie that obscured their face. Jordan's heart raced as the person walked toward them, but they couldn't afford to back down now. "Are you the one who contacted me?" Veronica asked, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The figure nodded slowly, glancing around the cafe. You're looking for a way out, aren't you? Not just a way out, Jordan interjected. We want answers. Who are you? What do you want? The figure chuckled, a low, menacing sound that sent chills down Jordan's spine. You're in way over your heads, kid. You should have thought twice before poking your nose where it doesn't belong. Jordan felt his fists clench, the urge to confront this person rising within him. We won't be intimidated, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. We know you're part of something bigger. You can't keep threatening us. The figure stepped closer, their expression shrouded in shadows. You don't know what you're dealing with. This isn't just about money, it's about power. And you're just pawns in a much larger game. A sense of dread washed over Jordan as the weight of the figure's words sank in. They were caught in a web of deceit, far beyond anything they had anticipated. Walk away now, and you might just get out unscathed, the figure warned, their voice low and threatening. Jordan exchanged a glance with Veronica, a silent communication passing between them. They had come too far to back down now, but the danger was becoming alarmingly real. No, Veronica said firmly. We won't walk away. We'll expose you. We'll bring this to the police, and you'll face the consequences of your actions. The figure laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. You really think you can take us down? You have no idea who you're dealing with. With a sudden movement, the figure turned to leave, but Jordan couldn't let them go. Wait, he shouted, rising from his seat. You can't just walk away. But before he could react, the figure slipped out the door, vanishing into the night. Jordan's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins, as the reality of what had just happened settled in. They were no longer just facing threats. They had stepped into a battle against an unseen enemy with their own agenda. What do we do now? Veronica asked, her voice trembling. We go after them, Jordan replied, determination flooding his senses. We find out who they are and what they want. We can't let them win. But as they left the cafe, a chilling thought gnawed at the back of Jordan's mind. What if they had just crossed a line they could never uncross? The world around them felt darker, and the weight of the danger loomed larger than ever. The next few weeks were a blur of tension and uncertainty. They were trapped in a cycle of fear, caught in a game of cat and mouse that threatened to unravel everything they had built. The threats escalated, becoming more brazen and vicious, and with each message, the sense of impending doom grew stronger. Jordan and Veronica began receiving anonymous phone calls at odd hours, each one more chilling than the last. They were taunted, reminded of their decision to confront the unknown. Each call felt like a warning, a reminder that they were being watched. One night, as they sat in their living room, the atmosphere thick with anxiety, Jordan received a message that made his blood run cold. We know where you live. You think you're safe, but you're not. We can reach you whenever we want. Veronica's face paled as she read the message over his shoulder. Jordan, this is getting out of hand. We have to leave. We can't stay here any longer. He felt a knot form in his stomach, the weight of her words pressing down on him. I won't run away. We need to stand our ground, but we also need to be smart. As they discussed their next move, the tension in the room began to morph into something heavier. Doubt crept in, and Jordan could feel the cracks forming in their resolve. The danger felt omnipresent, lurking just outside their door. The following days were a blur of unease. They tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, but the fear hung over them like a dark cloud. Each time the door creaked, or a car drove by, their hearts raced with dread. They were living on the edge, and every moment felt like a countdown to something catastrophic. One evening, as they sat in their living room, the sound of a knock shattered the fragile silence. They exchanged nervous glances, a surge of adrenaline coursing through their veins. Who could that be? Veronica whispered, her voice trembling. Jordan held up a hand, motioning for her to stay quiet. He crept to the door, peering through the peephole. His heart dropped as he recognized the figure on the other side. It was a police officer, his face serious and expression tense. With a deep breath, Jordan opened the door, forcing a smile. Officer, what brings you here? We need to talk, the officer replied, stepping inside. There's been an increase in reports regarding threats in this area, and we need to ensure your safety. Jordan's heart raced as he processed the words. Threats? You mean? Yes, we're aware of the messages you've been receiving, the officer said, his tone serious. We're taking them seriously, but I need to know everything you can tell me about the situation. Jordan glanced at Veronica, their eyes locking in a silent exchange. She looked scared but determined, and he knew they had to tread carefully. We've been getting anonymous threats, but we thought we could handle it ourselves. The officer's expression hardened. This isn't something to handle alone. You need to cooperate with us if you want to stay safe. We'll increase patrols around your area, but you must share everything you know." As they sat down to explain the situation, Jordan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, with the police involved, they could finally find a way to stop the threats. But as the officer left, the tension still loomed large. They were caught in a dangerous game, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the shadows were creeping closer. In the following weeks, the stakes grew higher. They had to balance their lives while navigating the increasing intensity of the situation. Jordan felt a desperate need to protect Veronica, but he could sense the growing frustration in her. She wanted to take action, to fight back against the looming threat, but they both knew they had to play it smart. One night, discussing their plans, Veronica suddenly froze, her gaze locked on the window. "Jordan, do you see that?" He turned, his heart racing as he followed her gaze. Outside, a car sat idling across the street, its headlights illuminating the darkness. He felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized the vehicle. It was the same one that had been parked near their home multiple times in the past week. "Is that same car?" Veronica whispered, her voice shaky. "I think so," he replied, his pulse quickening. "We need to call the police." As he reached for his phone, the car suddenly revved its engine and took off down the street. Jordan's heart raced as he and Veronica exchanged alarmed glances. "Did you get the plate number?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "No, but I'll report it," he said, dialing the police. "This is getting out of control." As he spoke to the officer on the line, Jordan felt a sense of urgency building within him. They were being hunted, and the feeling was suffocating. With every passing day, they were drawn deeper into a conflict that threatened not only their lives, but their very relationship. Days turned into weeks, and still, the threats persisted. Jordan and Veronica felt the weight of the danger bearing down on them. They were living in a constant state of alert, a tension that seemed to wrap around them like a vice. One evening, as they sat at their kitchen table, a sharp knock echoed through their home. They froze, the sound slicing through the silence like a knife. "Who could that be?" Veronica whispered, her eyes darting toward the door. Jordan stood, heart pounding as he moved to the window, peering through the curtains. "It's another police officer," he said, feeling a rush of relief mixed with dread. He opened the door, the officer stepping inside, a grim expression on his face. "We need to talk about the situation again," he said, his tone serious. As they sat down, Jordan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Is there more news?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes, we've received multiple reports about your case, and we're ramping up our efforts," the officer replied. "But I need to know if there's anything else you haven't shared. Any connections, any leads?" Jordan glanced at Veronica, their shared fear palpable. "We've been doing our own investigation. We think it might be tied to something from my past, but we're not sure." The officer leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Your past? We need to know everything. This could help us." Jordan's heart raced as he opened up about his former life, the mistakes he'd made, and the people he'd wronged. He had tried to escape it all, but now he felt the shadows of his past closing in. As he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just battling threats, but stepping into a web of deceit that was much larger than they had anticipated. The stakes were rising, and the tension grew thicker with every passing moment. The officer listened intently, but just as Jordan was about to divulge the last piece of his history, the lights in the house flickered, and the sound of shattering glass echoed from the back of the house. Panic surged through him as he turned to Veronica, who looked equally terrified. "Stay here," he said, moving toward the sound. But before he could reach the kitchen, the door swung open violently, and a shadowy figure burst in. The officer moved instinctively, drawing his weapon, but the figure was too fast, too furious. "What are you doing?" Jordan shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline as chaos erupted. The figure lunged, and the room exploded into a frenzy of movement. Jordan felt his heart race as he struggled to comprehend the chaos unfolding around him. The officer tried to regain control, but the intruder was relentless. In an instant, the situation spiraled out of control, and the tension in the room erupted into a physical confrontation. Jordan felt helpless as he watched the struggle unfold, the realization crashing over him that they were in a fight for their lives. The stakes had never been higher, and the danger was more real than ever before. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Veronica screamed, her voice piercing through the chaos. "Get down!" In that moment, everything seemed to freeze. The world slowed as Jordan turned, and in the flickering light of the kitchen, he saw the glint of something metallic in the intruder's hand. The figure was wielding a weapon, and the realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. "Veronica, get out!" Jordan shouted, but it was too late. The shot rang out, deafening in the confined space, and Jordan felt time shatter around him. As everything blurred into chaos, the weight of fear and despair crashed over him. In that moment, he knew that they had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The stakes had escalated, and the game was no longer just about survival. It was about confronting the dark shadows of the past that threatened to consume them both. Jordan felt himself slipping into a dark abyss, the tension becoming unbearable as the reality of their situation settled in. The fight was far from over, and the conflict was only beginning. The sharp crack of the gunshot echoed through the small kitchen, and time seemed to stretch infinitely as Jordan's mind raced. He could barely process what had just happened. Veronica's scream cut through the chaos, but all he could focus on was the figure that had burst into their home, their intentions shrouded in a veil of darkness. He sprang into action, adrenaline flooding his veins. The intruder was disoriented momentarily, their focus on the officer who had drawn his weapon. Jordan seized the opportunity and lunged forward, tackling the figure to the ground. The air filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder, and the world around him faded into a blur of motion and sound. "Get the weapon," he shouted to the officer, whose eyes widened in surprise before he regained his composure. But Jordan barely heard the command. All he could think about was protecting Veronica and ensuring they made it out of this alive. The intruder thrashed beneath him, their strength surprising. Jordan struggled to pin them down, feeling the sweat bead on his forehead. A surge of fear shot through him as he glanced over at Veronica, who stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth in horror. "Veronica, call for help," he yelled, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos of the struggle. The officer moved in, trying to help, but the intruder had an unnerving agility. They twisted and turned, managing to push Jordan off just enough to scramble to their feet. In the dim light, Jordan saw a glint of something shiny, the weapon, and without thinking, he lunged again. But the intruder was quicker this time. They grabbed the knife, a flicker of anger igniting in their eyes as they turned on Jordan, who barely had time to react. A surge of fear gripped him, and instinct kicked in. He sidestepped just in time, the blade slicing through the air where he had been standing moments before. "Step back," the officer shouted, raising his gun again. But the room was filled with tension, a standoff in a high-stakes game that had just begun. "Don't make this worse," Jordan implored, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions within him. He focused on the intruder, trying to gauge their next move. "We don't want to hurt you. Just put down the weapon." But the figure was breathing heavily, their face contorted in rage and fear. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourselves into. You think you can just interfere and walk away? You're too late." In that moment, a chilling realization washed over Jordan. They weren't just facing a common burglar. They were up against someone who had a personal vendetta. Someone who knew more about their situation than they had initially thought. "Who sent you?" Jordan demanded, trying to buy time, hoping to distract them long enough for the officer to intervene. "What do you want from us?" The intruder hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing their features. "You really don't know, do you?" But before Jordan could respond, the officer moved forward, his voice commanding. "I said drop the weapon. Now." The intruder shifted their gaze, weighing their options. Jordan could see the conflict playing out in their eyes, and he felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He was ready to protect what was his, but the stakes had never felt higher. Suddenly, the intruder lunged again, but this time, it was with purpose. They broke past Jordan and the officer, sprinting toward the back door. Jordan felt his heart race as he chased after them, pushing his body to its limits. "Stop," he shouted, but the figure was too quick, slipping through the door just as the officer fired a warning shot. The sound reverberated through the air, followed by a tense silence. Jordan rushed out the back, feeling the cool night air hit his face. He could see the intruder darting down the alley, a shadow against the flickering streetlights. The world felt surreal, a blur of panic and adrenaline fueling his every move. "Jordan, be careful," Veronica shouted from behind him, her voice laced with fear. But he couldn't stop now. He had to catch them, had to find out who was behind this madness. He ran after the figure, determination driving him forward. The alley was narrow, filled with the smell of damp concrete and the distant hum of the city, and Jordan could hear the footsteps ahead of him, echoing in the night. The figure turned sharply, disappearing into the maze of streets. Jordan pushed himself harder, weaving between parked cars, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear the officer behind him, barking orders into his radio as he tried to keep up. Suddenly, the intruders stumbled, catching their foot on a broken piece of pavement. Jordan seized the moment, lunging forward and managing to grab their arm. They twisted, and for a brief second, he saw their face illuminated by a streetlight, a face he recognized but couldn't place. "Who are you?" Jordan demanded, breathing heavily as he struggled to hold on. The intruder smirked, a cruel twist of their lips that sent a chill down his spine. "You really want to know? Fine, but you won't like what you hear." Before Jordan could react, they wrenched free, pushing him backward with surprising strength. He stumbled, trying to regain his balance, but they were gone in an instant, disappearing into the shadows of the night. Panting heavily, Jordan stopped, frustration boiling within him. He had come so close. He glanced back, realizing the officer had caught up, his expression grim. "Did you get anything?" the officer asked, clearly agitated. Jordan shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "No, they got away. But I know them. I've seen their face before. It's someone from my past, someone connected to the threats. Then we need to figure out who they are and what they want," the officer said, glancing back toward the alley. "You two should stay inside until we can ensure your safety." Jordan nodded, but the weight of dread settled heavily in his chest. This wasn't just a random incident anymore. The stakes were rising, and he could feel the shadows of his past creeping closer. When they returned to house, Veronica was waiting, her expression a mix of fear and concern. "What happened? Are you okay?" Jordan nodded, but his mind was racing. "It's someone I know. Someone who has a reason to come after me. I just need to figure out how they're connected to all of this." As the officer left, Jordan and Veronica huddled in their living room, tension thick in the air. "You need to tell me everything," Veronica said, her voice steady despite the chaos that surrounded them. Jordan took a deep breath, his past flooding back like a tidal wave. "A few years ago, I got involved with the wrong crowd. I was chasing dreams of success, but I got caught up in a world of deception and greed. I thought I could leave it all behind, but it seems it's come back to haunt me." "What do you mean?" she pressed, concern etched across her features. "There were deals, shady business, and people who weren't exactly trustworthy," he explained, trying to keep his voice steady. "I thought I was smart enough to outmaneuver them, but I must have left some loose ends. This person, they were part of that world, and they're not the only one. There are others." Veronica's eyes widened as the pieces began to connect. "So they're coming after you because of your past?" Jordan nodded, the weight of realization pressing down on him. "They want revenge, or they want something from me. I don't know what, but I need to find out before it's too late." As they sat in silence, contemplating the danger that loomed over them, a new wave of anxiety washed over Jordan. He couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were hanging by a thread, and the situation was spiraling out of control. In the following days, they tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but every moment was filled with tension. They continued receiving anonymous messages, each one more threatening than the last, and the feeling of being watched became a constant companion. Jordan knew they had to take action. They couldn't wait for the police to solve everything. He needed answers, and the only way to get them was to confront the demons of his past head-on. One night, after another sleepless evening filled with anxiety, he gathered the courage to reach out to someone he hoped could help a former associate from his past, who had once been involved in the same world. He dialed the number, heart racing as the phone rang. After what felt like an eternity, a voice answered. "What do you want?" "Carmen, it's me. I need information. It's important." There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a cautious response. "Jordan? What's going on? You shouldn't be calling me. It's dangerous." "I know it's dangerous, but I'm in over my head. I need to know if you've heard anything about the threats. I think they're connected to my past, and I can't do this alone." Another pause. "You should stay away from this. The people we used to deal with, they're not playing games anymore. They'll come after you." "I can handle myself," Jordan insisted, the fire of determination rising within him. "But I need your help. Please." Carmen sighed, and Jordan could hear the hesitation in her voice. "Fine. Meet me at the old warehouse by the docks. But you have to be careful. You can't trust anyone." Jordan agreed, feeling a mix of relief and dread. As he hung up the phone, he turned to Veronica, who had been listening intently. "Who was that?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "A friend from my past," he replied, the weight of his decision hanging heavy in the air. "I'm going to meet her. She might have some answers." "No, Jordan. It's too dangerous, Veronica urged, worry flooding her expression. We don't know who we can trust. I have to do this. I need to know what I'm up against, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. I can't let them control my life any longer. Veronica shook her head, fear evident in her eyes. I don't want you to go. What if it's a trap? Jordan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'll be careful. I promise. I just need to figure out what's really going on. That night, as he prepared to leave, a knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. He had no idea what he was walking into, but he felt trapped by the specters of his past, unable to escape their grasp. When he arrived at the warehouse, the air was thick with the smell of salt and rust. The faint sound of waves crashing against the dock echoed in the distance as he stepped into the dimly lit space. Shadows danced on the walls, and he felt a chill run down his spine. Carmen? He called out, his voice breaking the silence. A figure stepped from the shadows, a silhouette familiar yet different. Carmen looked older, wearier, the weight of their shared past etched on her face. Jordan, she said, her tone guarded. You shouldn't have come here. I had to, he replied, feeling the tension between them. I need to know what's going on. I need your help. Carmen hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. It's not safe here. They're watching. You need to leave. But I can't just walk away, he insisted. I need answers. With a resigned sigh, Carmen led him deeper into the warehouse, the air thick with uncertainty. They moved past old crates and discarded equipment, the echoes of their footsteps reverberating around them. Finally, they reached a small, dimly lit office. Carmen closed the door behind them, ensuring they were alone. Listen, Jordan, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper.